Jake Mitchell wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the ruins of what used to be a small city on Kepler 442b. The red dust covered everything, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. His team had been patrolling this area for 3 weeks now, looking for any signs of enemy activity or survivors who might need help. The war had been going on for 5 years, and Jake had seen too many destroyed worlds. The hegemony and the syndicate fought each other across the galaxy, and peaceful planets like this one always got caught in the middle. The locals called this place New Hope before the fighting started, but there was not much hope left now. Jake heard a small sound coming from behind a pile of broken concrete. He held up his hand to signal his team to stop and moved closer to investigate. The sound came again, like a soft crying or whimpering. Jake pulled out his scanner and checked for life signs. The device showed one small heat signature hidden in the rubble. Moving carefully, Jake climbed over the broken pieces of buildings until he found a small opening. Inside, he saw something that made him stop breathing for a moment. A young alien child was curled up in a tiny space, her body glowing faintly with pale blue light. She looked up at him with large, frightened eyes that seemed to hold tiny stars. Jake had never seen a Zephyrian before, but he recognized the species from his training materials. Her skin was almost clear like glass, with soft light moving under the surface. The light changed colors as she looked at him, shifting from blue to green to a worried purple. She was small, maybe the size of a human child around 8 years old. But Jake knew that Zephyrians aged differently than humans. The child was holding something in her small hands. Jake could see it was a broken communication device, its screen cracked and dark. She tried to speak, but her voice was so quiet that Jake had to lean closer to hear her. "Please," she whispered in broken Terran standard. "Help me find Mama." Jake felt his heart break a little. He had been a soldier for 10 years, and he had learned to keep his emotions locked away during missions. But something about this small creature, alone and scared in the ruins of her world, made all his training seem less important. "What is your name?" Jake asked gently, trying to keep his voice calm and friendly. "Lyra," the child said, her skin flickering with nervous yellow light. "Lyra Moonweaver. Mama is Vera Moonweaver. We got separated when the bad ships came." Jake looked at the broken device in her hands. "Is that how you talk to your mama?" Lyra nodded, tears running down her translucent cheeks. "But it stopped working many days ago. I cannot feel her anymore. Zephyrians can feel family members even when they are far away, but I cannot feel Mama now." Jake knew a little about Zephyrian culture from his briefings. They were a peaceful species that lived in family groups, and they had some kind of biological connection to their relatives. When families were separated, it could make them very sick or even kill them slowly. "How long have you been alone?" Jake asked. 3 years, Lyra said, and her light dimmed until she was almost gray. "I have been moving from planet to planet, asking everyone if they have seen Mama. Some people helped me, but most just told me to go away." Jake felt anger building up inside him. 3 years was a long time for any child to be alone, but for a Zephyrian, it was almost a death sentence. He could see that Lyra was getting weaker. Her light was not as bright as it should be, and her skin looked brittle like it might crack. "Tell me about your mama," Jake said, sitting down next to the small opening so he would not seem so big and scary. Lyra's light got a little brighter, and she smiled for the first time. "Mama is beautiful. She sings songs that make the light dance under her skin. She taught me about the old stories and how to make the light patterns that mean I love you and be safe and come home." As Lyra spoke, Jake could see faint patterns of light moving across her skin. They were weak and flickering, but they were still there. He realized that she was probably trying to send those same patterns to her mother, hoping that somehow Vera would feel them and know that her daughter was still alive. "Can you show me a picture of your mama?" Jake asked. Lyra touched the broken communication device and somehow managed to make part of the screen flicker to life. A holographic image appeared, showing a taller Zephyrian with the same clear skin and star-like eyes. Vera Moonweaver was beautiful in an alien way, with graceful features and light patterns that moved like liquid silver under her skin. She is. Lovely, Jake said, and he meant it. Do you know where she might be now? Lyra shook her head sadly. The last time I heard from her, she was trying to get to the Outer Rim. She said she would find work there and save money to look for me, but that was many months ago. Jake made a decision that would change everything. His commanding officer had told the team to focus on military objectives and not get involved with refugees unless it was absolutely necessary. But looking at this small, brave child who had been searching for her mother for 3 years, Jake decided that some things were more important than following orders. Lyra, he said firmly, I'm going to help you find your mama. The child's light brightened so much that Jake had to squint. Really? You will help me? I promise, Jake said. And he meant it with every part of his being. We will find Vera Moonweaver and we will bring you back together. Lyra crawled out of her hiding place and stood up. She was even smaller than Jake had thought, barely reaching his waist. Her light was still dim, but there was hope in her eyes. Now, she reached out with one small hand and touched Jake's arm. Thank you, she whispered. I knew that humans were good people. The smugglers who helped me escape told me that humans always try to help others even when it is dangerous. Jake felt the weight of her trust and hope. He had made a promise to this child, and he would keep it no matter what it cost him. He picked up Lyra carefully, surprised by how light she was, and carried her back to where his team was waiting. The other soldiers looked surprised to see him carrying an alien child, but Jake just stared at them with an expression that said, he was not going to discuss it. He had made his choice, and now he had to figure out how to keep his promise without getting himself and his team in trouble. As they walked back to their base, Jake could feel Lyra's small hand holding on to his uniform. Her light had gotten a little brighter, and she was no longer crying. For the first time in 3 years, Lyra Moonweaver had hoped that she might see her mother again. Jake did not know how he was going to make this work, but he knew that he had to try. Some things were more important than following orders, and helping a lost child find her family was definitely one of those things. Jake sat at his desk in the military base, staring at the computer screen filled with refugee databases. It had been 2 days since he found Lyra, and he was trying to find any information about her mother without raising suspicion from his commanding officers. The little Zephyrian girl was sleeping in the medical bay, where the doctors were trying to help her regain some strength. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez walked over to Jake's desk with a cup of coffee in her hands. Amy was the best communications officer on the base, and Jake knew she was good at finding information that others could not. She had been helping him search through the refugee records whenever she had free time. Any luck finding information about Vera Moonweaver? Amy asked quietly, looking around to make sure no one was listening to their conversation. Jake shook his head with frustration. There are millions of Zephyrian refugees scattered across dozens of worlds. Most of them do not have proper identification papers, and many are using false names to hide from the authorities who might send them back to dangerous areas. Amy pulled up a chair next to Jake and opened her own computer. Let me show you what I found today. I searched through the employment records from mining stations in the Outer Rim, and I think I found something interesting. She pointed to a name on the screen, Vera Starlight. The identification photo showed a Zephyrian woman who looked very similar to the hologram that Lyra had shown them. That could be her, Jake said, feeling a spark of hope. Zephyrians sometimes change their names when they are trying to hide their identity. Lyra said her mother was going to look for work in the Outer Rim. Amy clicked on the employment record. According to this, Vera Starlight worked at mining station Omega 7 for about 6 months, but she left 8 months ago. The records show that she was asking other workers if they had seen a young Zephyrian girl. Jake felt his heart racing. This had to be Lyra's mother? Do we know where she went after leaving the mining station? The trail goes cold after that, Amy said sadly. But I did find something else. There are reports of a Zephyrian woman matching her description who was seen at refugee camps on 3 different worlds. She was always asking about her daughter and showing people a picture. Jake looked at the dates on the reports. Vera had been searching for Lyra just as desperately as Lyra had been searching for her. They had been moving through the same areas, sometimes only weeks apart, but they had never found each other. "There is something else you need to know," Amy said, her voice becoming more serious. "I talked to the medical staff about Lyra's condition. They told me that Zephyrians have a biological need to be connected to their family members. When they are separated for too long, their bodies start to break down." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The light patterns under their skin are not just for communication," Amy explained. "They are part of a complex biological system that keeps them healthy. When Zephyrians are separated from their family for years, their bodies start to shut down slowly. The doctors said that Lyra is showing signs of what they call connection decay." Jake thought about how dim Lyra's light had been when he found her, and how weak she still looked even after 2 days of medical care. "How long does she have?" "We cannot reunite her with her mother soon. She might not survive another year," Amy said quietly. "And the same thing is probably happening to Vera. They are both slowly dying from grief and loneliness." Jake felt angry at the unfairness of it. Oh. He had seen many terrible things during the war, but the idea that this innocent child and her mother were dying simply because they could not find each other seemed especially cruel. "We have to find Vera," Jake said with determination. "I do not care what it takes," Amy nodded, but then looked worried. "Jake, I need to tell you something. Colonel Davis has been asking questions about why you brought Lyra back to the base. He wants to know why you are spending so much time in the medical bay and why you are using the computer systems to search refugee databases." Jake had been expecting this. Colonel Davis was a good officer, but he was very strict about following military rules and procedures. Taking care of refugee children was not part of their mission on Kepler 442b. "What did you tell him?" Jake asked. "I told him that you were just being thorough about checking for intelligence information," Amy said. "But I do not think he believed me. He's planning to talk to you tomorrow morning." Jake knew that he was running out of time. If Colonel Davis ordered him to stop searching for Vera, he would have to choose between following orders and keeping his promise to Lyra. The thought of telling the little girl that he could not help her anymore made his stomach feel sick. That evening, Jake went to visit Lyra in the medical bay. She was awake, sitting up in bed and looking out the window at the stars. Her light was a little brighter than it had been when he found her, but she still looked very fragile. "Hello, Jake," she said with a small smile. "Did you find any information about Mama today?" Jake sat down in the chair next to her bed. "We found some traces of where she has been. Your Mama has been looking for you too, Lyra. She has been traveling from planet to planet, just like you have been doing." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but her light became brighter. "Really? Mama is still looking for me?" "Yes," Jake said firmly. "We found employment records and witness reports. She has been searching for you for 3 years, just like you have been searching for her." Lyra reached out and took Jake's hand with her small fingers. "I knew Mama would never stop looking for me. Zephyrians do not give up on family." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Lyra, I need you to know that I might have some problems with my commanding officer. He might not want me to keep searching for your Mama." Lyra's light dimmed with worry. "Does that mean you will stop helping me?" Jake looked into her star-filled eyes and made another decision that would change everything. "No, Lyra, I made you a promise and I'm going to keep it, even if it means I have to break some rules." The next morning, Jake stood in Colonel Davis's office, waiting to hear what his commanding officer had to say. The colonel was a tall, serious man who had served in the military for over 20 years. "Sergeant Mitchell," Colonel Davis said, looking up from his desk, "I understand that you have been using military resources to search for information about alien refugees. Can you explain why you think this is part of your duties?" Jake stood straight and looked directly at his commanding officer. "Sir, I found a child who needs help. Her mother is missing, and without family connection, Zephyrians can die from biological breakdown. I believe it is our duty as human beings to help when we can." Colonel Davis frowned. "Your duty is to follow orders and complete your assigned missions. Taking care of refugee children is not part of our mission parameters." "With respect, sir," Jake said. Sometimes being human is more important than following mission parameters. The colonel stared at Jake for a long moment. I am denying your request to use military resources for this search. You will focus on your assigned duties and stop this unauthorized investigation immediately. Jake felt his heart sink, but he kept his expression calm. Yes, sir. As he left the colonel's office, Jake knew that he had reached a crossroads. He could follow orders and let Lyra and her mother die slowly from separation, or he could do what he knew was right and face the consequences. That afternoon, Jake made his choice. He requested emergency leave, claiming that he needed to deal with a family emergency back on Earth. His leave was approved for 2 weeks. Jake did not plan to go to Earth. He planned to take Lyra and search for her mother, even if it meant he would be in serious trouble when he returned. Some things were more important than following orders, and saving a family was definitely one of those things. Jake packed his personal belongings into a small travel bag, making sure to include extra food supplies and medical equipment for Lyra. The little Zephyrian girl sat on his bunk, watching him with curious eyes. Her light was still dim, but she seemed excited about the possibility of searching for her mother. Are we really going to look for Mama? Lyra asked, her skin flickering with hopeful green patterns. Yes, Jake said firmly. We are going to find her, no matter how long it takes. Jake had spent the last 2 days making secret preparations. Amy had helped him gather information about refugee networks and safe routes through contested space. She had also given him contact information for people who might be able to help them. I wish I could come with you, Amy said as she met them at the small transport dock behind the military base. But someone needs to stay here and make sure. Colonel Davis does not realize what you are really doing. Jake nodded and shook Amy's hand. Thank you for everything. If this goes wrong, make sure people know that I chose to do this on my own. Amy smiled sadly. Just bring that little girl back to her mother. That is all the thanks I need. Jake picked up Lyra and carried her to the small civilian transport ship he had rented using his personal credits. The ship was old and not very comfortable, but it was fast enough to get them away from the military base without being detected. As they flew away from Kepler 442b, Jake contacted the first person on Amy's list of helpful contacts. The communication screen flickered to life, showing a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Hello, the woman said. You must be Jake Mitchell. Amy Rodriguez told me you might be calling. My name is Dr. Helen Carter. Dr. Carter? I need help finding someone. I have a Zephyrian child who has been separated from her mother for 3 years. Dr. Carter's expression became very serious. 3 years is a long time for a Zephyrian family separation. How is the child's health? Jake looked at Lyra, who was sitting quietly in the co-pilot seat, her light patterns weak and flickering. The military doctors said she has connection decay. They said she might not survive much longer without her mother. Then we do not have time to waste, Dr. Carter sighed. I am sending you coordinates to a safe location where we can meet. Be careful during your journey, and do not trust anyone who asks too many questions about your destination. The coordinates led Jake and Lyra to a hidden base built inside a large asteroid in an uninhabited system. The base was much bigger than Jake had expected, with docking bays for dozens of ships and living quarters for hundreds of people. Dr. Carter met them at the docking bay, along with several other humans and aliens who were part of her organization. Jake could see that many of the people working at the base were refugees themselves, people who had lost their families and homes during the war. Welcome to Haven Station, Dr. Carter said as she led them through the corridors. We have been helping reunite separated families for the past 4 years. We are not officially supported by any government, but we have friends in many places who help us when they can. Jake was amazed by what he saw. The base had medical facilities, communications equipment, and even schools for refugee children. There were Zephyrians, humans, and several other alien species all working together to help families find each other. How many people have you helped? Jake asked. Over 2,000 families, Dr. Carter said proudly. But there are still millions of people scattered across the galaxy who need help. The war has separated so many families that the official refugee agencies cannot handle all the cases. She led them to a large room filled with computers and communication equipment. Several people were working at the stations, sending messages and searching through databases. "This is where we do most of our search work," Dr. Carter explained. "We have contacts on dozens of worlds who help us track down missing family members. We also have a network of ships that can transport people to safe locations." Jake showed Dr. Carter the holographic image of Vera Moonweaver. "This is who we are looking for. Her name is Vera, and she might be using the name Vera Starlight. We know she was looking for work in the Outer Rim." Dr. Carter studied the image carefully. "She is beautiful. Zephyrians have such distinctive features that it should be easier to track her down than some other species. Let me talk to my search team and see what we can find." While Dr. Carter and her team worked on finding new information about Vera, Jake and Lyra were given a small room to rest in. Lyra was fascinated by all the other refugee children at the base, especially the few other young Zephyrians she met. "Look, Jake," Lyra said excitedly, pointing to a group of children playing in the recreation area. "There are other Zephyrians here. I have not seen any of my own people for so long." Jake watched as Lyra approached the other Zephyrian children. Their light patterns began to synchronize, creating beautiful displays of color and movement. For the first time since Jake had found her, Lyra looked truly happy. An older Zephyrian woman came over to talk to Jake. "Your daughter is very strong," she said, her skin glowing with warm golden light. "Most children would not have survived 3 years of separation from their family." "She is not my daughter," Jake said. "I am just helping her find her mother." The woman looked surprised. "You are not related to her? Then why are you risking so much to help her?" Jake thought about the question for a moment, because it is the right thing to do. No child should have to be alone and afraid, no matter what species they are. The woman smiled, and her light patterns became even warmer. "You have a good heart, human. The galaxy needs more people like you." Dr. Carter found them in the recreation area later that evening. She had news, but Jake could tell from her expression that it was not all good. "We found more information about Vera," she said. "The good news is that we have confirmed sightings of her on 3 different worlds in the past 6 months. The bad news is that she was injured in a mining accident about 4 months ago." Jake felt his heart sink. How badly was she hurt? "We do not know the details yet," Dr. Carter said. "But we know she was taken to a medical facility on the planet New Geneva. The problem is that New Geneva is in contested space, and it is dangerous to travel there." Lyra had been listening to the conversation, and her light patterns became very agitated. "Is Mama hurt? Is she okay?" Dr. Carter knelt down to Lyra's level. "We do not know how badly she was hurt, but we know she is alive." "Medical facilities? Always keep good records, so if she is there, we will be able to find her." Jake made his decision quickly. "How do we get to New Geneva?" "It will not be easy," Dr. Carter warned. "The Hegemony and the Syndicate both have patrol ships in that area. We will need to use one of our fastest ships and take a very careful route." "I do not care how dangerous it is," Jake said firmly. "We have come this far, and we are not going to give up now." Dr. Carter nodded with respect. "I thought you might say that. I am assigning Captain Lisa Stone to take you to New Geneva. She is one of our best pilots, and she knows how to avoid the patrol ships." As Jake and Lyra prepared for the next part of their journey, Jake realized that he had found something he had never expected. The people at Haven Station were not just helping refugees find their families. They were creating a new kind of family. One that included anyone who needed help and support. Jake looked at Lyra, who was saying goodbye to the other Zephyrian children. She was still weak, and her light was still dim, but she had hope now. She knew that her mother was alive, and that was enough to keep her going. "Are you ready for the next part of our adventure?" Jake asked her. Lyra nodded, her light flickering with determination. "I am ready. Let us go find Mama." Captain Lisa Stone was a tough woman with short brown hair and steady hands that never shook, even when enemy ships were shooting at her. She had been flying rescue missions for Dr. Carter's organization for 2 years, and she knew every safe route through contested space. "The journey to New Geneva will take us 3 days," Lisa told Jake and Lyra as they prepared to leave Haven Station. "We will have to be very careful because both the Hegemony and the Syndicate have patrol ships in that area. They shoot first and ask questions later." Jake strapped himself into the passenger seat while Lyra sat in a special safety harness designed for smaller beings. The ship was called the Swift Arrow, and it was built for speed and stealth rather than comfort. The walls were covered with sensor equipment and communication devices that would help them avoid detection. "Have you been to New Geneva before?" Jake asked Lisa as they flew away from the asteroid base. "Several times," Lisa said, her eyes focused on the navigation display. "It is a medical planet that treats injured refugees from all over the galaxy. The doctors there are good people, but they have to follow strict rules about patient privacy because many of their patients are hiding from dangerous people." Lyra was quiet during the first day of the journey. Her light patterns were flickering weakly, and Jake could see that she was getting sicker. The hope of finding her mother was keeping her alive, but her body was still breaking down from the years of separation. "Tell me about your mama," Jake said, trying to keep Lyra's spirits up. "What did she like to do when you were together?" Lyra's light became a little brighter as she remembered happier times. "Mama loved to sing the old songs that told stories about our ancestors. She would make her light dance in patterns that matched the music, and I would try to copy her movements. She said that someday I would be able to sing the songs to my own children." Jake smiled, but he felt sad thinking about how much time Lyra and her mother had lost. "What else did you do together?" "We would go to the Crystal Gardens on our homeworld," Lyra said, her voice becoming dreamy with memory. There were tall structures made of natural crystal that would make beautiful sounds when the wind blew through them. Mama would teach me how to read the light patterns that the crystals made when they sang. Jake had never heard of crystal gardens before, but he could imagine how beautiful they must have been. "Do you think your homeworld will ever be safe again?" Lyra's light dimmed with sadness. "The bad people took all the crystals and sold them to make weapons. There is nothing left of our home now. But Mama always said that home is not a place, it is the people you love. When I find Mama, we will make a new home together." On the second day of their journey, Lisa had to change course twice to avoid patrol ships. Jake watched the sensor displays nervously as enemy vessels passed close to their location. The Swift Arrow was equipped with stealth technology that made it hard to detect, but it was not perfect. "There is a Hegemony cruiser about 10,000 kilometers away," Lisa said quietly. "Everyone stay very still and do not make any noise." Jake held his breath as the enemy ship moved across their sensors. If they were discovered, the cruiser would either destroy them or capture them and ask difficult questions about what they were doing in contested space. After what felt like hours, the cruiser moved away and Lisa breathed a sigh of relief. "We are clear. New Geneva is only 6 more hours away." When they finally arrived at New Geneva, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The entire planet was covered with medical facilities, research centers, and refugee camps. Ships from dozens of different worlds were arriving and departing constantly, bringing injured people to receive treatment. Lisa landed the Swift Arrow at a busy spaceport near the largest medical complex. "This is where we will find the main patient database," she told Jake and Lyra. "But getting access to medical records will not be easy. The doctors here are very careful about protecting patient privacy." Jake picked up Lyra and carried her through the crowded spaceport. She was getting weaker, and he could see that even walking was becoming difficult for her. Her light patterns were barely visible now, just faint flickers under her translucent skin. The medical complex was enormous, with hundreds of buildings connected by covered walkways. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. There were humans, Zephyrians, and dozens of other alien races, all seeking medical help or looking for missing family members. At the main information desk, Jake spoke to a human woman. who looked tired and overworked. I'm looking for someone who might be a patient here. Her name is Vera Moonweaver, but she might be using the name Vera Starlight. The woman looked at Jake suspiciously. Are you family? Jake looked down at Lyra, who was clinging to his shirt with weak fingers. This is her daughter. They were separated 3 years ago, and we have been searching for her mother. The woman's expression softened slightly when she saw Lyra, but she still shook her head. I am sorry, but I cannot give out patient information without proper authorization. You will need to speak to someone in the Family Reunification Department. The Family Reunification Department was located in a different building, and Jake had to carry Lyra through several long corridors to reach it. By the time they arrived, Lyra was so weak that she could barely keep her eyes open. The department was run by a kind elderly man named Dr. Robert Kim, who had been helping reunite families for over 20 years. He took one look at Lyra and immediately understood how serious the situation was. Zephyrian connection decay, he said quietly. How long has she been separated from her mother? 3 years, Jake said. We have been following her mother's trail across the galaxy, and we think she might be here. Dr. Kim nodded gravely. I have seen this condition before. The child does not have much time left. Let me see what I can do to help you find her mother. Dr. Kim spent 2 hours searching through patient databases, but he could not find any record of Vera Moonweaver or Vera Starlight. Jake felt his hope beginning to fade, and Lyra's light was getting dimmer by the hour. There's one more thing we can try, Dr. Kim said. Sometimes patients are admitted under protective custody with false names to keep them safe from people who might want to hurt them. Let me check with the security department. While Dr. Kim was gone, Jake sat with Lyra in the waiting room. She was so weak now that she could barely speak, but she managed to whisper, Are we close to finding Mama? Yes, Jake said, though he was not sure if it was true. We are very close now. Dr. Kim returned with a security officer and a nurse, who looked excited about something. We think we found her, the nurse said. There is a Zephyrian woman in the long-term care facility who has been asking about her daughter every day since she arrived. She was admitted under protective custody, so her real name was not in the main database. Jake felt his heart racing. Can we see her? She is in room 247 in the long-term care building, the nurse said. But I should warn you that she was badly injured in a mining accident. She has been recovering for months, but she is still very weak. Jake picked up Lyra and followed the nurse through the medical complex. Lyra seemed to sense that something important was happening, and her light flickered with weak but excited patterns as they approached room 247. Jake could see soft light coming from under the door. It was the gentle, warm light of a Zephyrian, and it seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched Lyra's own faint patterns. That is Mama, Lyra whispered, her voice filled with wonder. I can feel her now. She is really here. The nurse opened the door, and Jake saw a Zephyrian woman lying in a hospital bed. She was thinner than in the holographic image, and there were signs of healing injuries on her arms and face. But when she saw Lyra, her light blazed with joy and recognition. Lyra, Vera whispered, tears streaming down her face. My beautiful daughter, I never stopped looking for you. Jake gently placed Lyra on the bed next to her mother. The moment they touched, both of their light patterns exploded with brilliant colors that filled the entire room. Jake had to step back because the light was so bright it hurt his eyes, but through the blazing light, he could see that both mother and daughter were already looking healthier. Their connection was being restored, and their bodies were beginning to heal from the years of separation. Jake smiled as he watched the reunion he had promised to make happen. After 3 years of searching, Lyra Moonweaver was finally home. The light display that filled room 247 was unlike anything Jake had ever seen before. Mother and daughter held each other tightly, their bioluminescent patterns creating waves of silver, gold, and blue that danced across the walls and ceiling. The light was so beautiful and intense that several nurses and doctors came running to see what was happening. Dr. Kim stood in the doorway with tears in his eyes. In 20 years of family reunification work, I have never seen anything quite Like this, he said softly. The biological connection between Zephyrians is truly remarkable. Jake watched as both Vera and Lyra began to look healthier with each passing minute. The gray, brittle appearance that had been slowly killing them was fading away, replaced by the warm, translucent glow that showed their bodies were healing. Lyra's light patterns, which had been so weak and flickering, were now bright and strong, as they synchronized perfectly with her mother's. "My precious child," Vera whispered in the Zephyrian language, her voice filled with joy and relief. "I searched for you on so many worlds. I never gave up hope that we would find each other again." Lyra pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, her small body shaking with happy tears. "I knew you were looking for me, Mama. Even when my light was almost gone, I could feel that you were still alive somewhere." Jake felt his own eyes filling with tears as he watched the reunion. He had made a promise to a scared, lonely child, and he had kept it. But more than that, he had learned something important about the power of love and determination to overcome even the most impossible obstacles. Vera looked up at Jake with gratitude shining in her star-filled eyes. "You brought my daughter back." "To me," she said in careful Terran standard. "I do not know how to thank you for this gift." "Seeing you both healthy and together is all the thanks I need," Jake said, meaning every word. Dr. Kim approached the bed with a medical scanner in his hands. "I would like to check your vital signs," he told Vera and Lyra. "The change in your condition has been so rapid that I want to make sure you are both stable." The scanner showed that both mother and daughter were improving at an amazing rate. Their bioluminescent patterns were stronger than they had been in years, and their cellular regeneration was accelerating as their biological connection was restored. "This is truly incredible," Dr. Kim said, studying the readings. "Your recovery rate is far beyond anything in our medical textbooks. The bond between Zephyrian family members is even stronger than we thought." Jake was happy to see Vera and Lyra getting better, but he knew that their problems were not completely solved yet. They were still refugees with no permanent home, and Jake was technically absent without leave from his military duties. As if reading his thoughts, Dr. Kim said, "There are some practical matters we need to discuss. Vera is still recovering from her injuries, and she will need several more weeks of medical care. Lyra also needs time to fully recover from the connection decay." "What about after that?" Jake asked. "Where will they go?" Before Dr. Kim could answer, there was a commotion in the hallway outside the room. Jake heard familiar voices, and his heart sank as he realized who was coming. Colonel Frank Davis walked into the room, followed by 2 military police officers and Amy Rodriguez. The colonel's face was stern and angry, but Amy looked relieved to see that Jake and Lyra were safe. "Sergeant Mitchell," Colonel Davis said in a cold voice, "you are under arrest for desertion, theft of military property, and unauthorized absence from your assigned duties." Jake stepped forward, placing himself between the colonel and the hospital bed where Vera and Lyra were still holding each other. "Sir, I can explain everything." "There is nothing to explain," Colonel Davis said. "You disobeyed direct orders and abandoned your post to go on some unauthorized rescue mission. The penalty for desertion during wartime is severe." Amy stepped forward nervously. "Colonel, if I may speak, there are some things you need to know about Sergeant Mitchell's mission." "Lieutenant Rodriguez, you are already in enough trouble for helping him," the colonel warned. "I suggest you remain silent," but Amy continued anyway. "Sir, while investigating Sergeant Mitchell's activities, we discovered something important. The refugee databases that he was accessing contained evidence of a criminal conspiracy." Colonel Davis frowned. "What kind of conspiracy?" Dr. Kim, who had been listening to the conversation, suddenly looked very interested. "Colonel, if you have discovered criminal activity involving refugee records, that could explain some things we have been wondering about here at the medical center." Amy pulled out a data pad and handed it to the colonel. "Sir, the search patterns that Jake was following led us to discover that corrupt officials in the refugee administration have been deliberately separating families and selling information to human trafficking networks." Jake felt shocked. He had been so focused on finding Vera that he had not realized his search might uncover something bigger. The criminals were making money by keeping families separated. Amy continued. They would tell refugees that their family members were dead or had moved to distant planets, while actually selling the location information to traffickers who wanted to capture vulnerable people. Colonel Davis studied the datapad with growing interest. How many families were affected? Hundreds, possibly thousands, Amy said. The investigation is still ongoing, but it appears that Jake's search for Lyra's mother accidentally exposed the entire operation. Dr. Kim nodded thoughtfully. That would explain why so many of our patients have been unable to find their families. Despite having good leads, someone has been deliberately providing false information to keep them separated. Colonel Davis looked at Jake with a slightly less angry expression. Sergeant Mitchell, did you know about this conspiracy when you began your unauthorized mission? No, sir, Jake said honestly. I was just trying to help a child find her mother. I had no idea that there was a larger criminal operation involved. Vera, who had been listening to the conversation while holding Lyra protectively, spoke up in her careful Terran standard. The human trafficking networks are real, she said. When I was working at the mining stations, I heard stories about families who thought their relatives were dead, only to discover later that they had been sold to slave traders. Colonel Davis was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything he had heard. Finally, he turned to the military police officers. Stand down, there will be no arrest at this time. Jake felt a wave of relief, but he knew he was not completely out of trouble yet. However, Colonel Davis continued, there will be a full investigation into your actions, Sergeant Mitchell. The fact that your mission accidentally uncovered criminal activity does not excuse your violation of military protocol. Amy stepped forward again. Sir, I have a suggestion. The Refugee Administration has asked for military assistance in investigating the trafficking networks that Jake discovered. Perhaps Sergeant Mitchell could be reassigned to work on that investigation. Colonel Davis considered this idea. That would be an appropriate way for him to make up for his unauthorized actions while using his knowledge of the case to help the investigation. Jake looked at Vera and Lyra, who were watching the conversation with worried expressions. Sir, what about them? They still need protection and a safe place to live. The Refugee Administration is establishing a new program to help families that were affected by the trafficking conspiracy, Colonel Davis said. They will receive protected status and assistance in finding permanent homes. Dr. Kim smiled. I know of several worlds that would be happy to welcome Zephyrian refugees. There are communities there where Vera and Lyra could build a new life safely. 6 months later, Jake stood in a beautiful garden on the planet Harmony, watching Lyra play with other young Zephyrians among flowering trees and singing crystal formations. The planet had welcomed refugee families from across the galaxy, and it had become a place where different species lived together in peace. Vera approached him with 2 cups of tea, her light patterns glowing with health and happiness. Thank you for coming to visit us, she said. Lyra has been so excited to show you our new home. Jake accepted the tea and smiled as he watched Lyra demonstrate the light dancing games she had learned from the other children. She was completely healthy now, her bioluminescent patterns bright and joyful as she played. I'm glad to see you both so happy, Jake said. This place suits you. We could never have found this happiness without your help, Vera said seriously. You kept your promise to my daughter, and you gave us back our lives. Jake's new assignment working with the Refugee Administration had led to the arrest of dozens of criminals and the reunification of over 300 families. He had learned that sometimes the most important battles were not fought with weapons, but with compassion and determination to help others. As the sun set over Harmony, Jake watched Vera and Lyra walk hand in hand toward their new home, their lights creating beautiful patterns that said love, safety, and family. He had helped bring them together, but they had taught him something even more valuable about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of different species who all shared the same basic need for love and connection. Jake smiled as he prepared to return to his ship. There were other families out there who needed help, and he had found his true calling in making